Joining us now from Washington, Democratic Congressman from Maryland and the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Representative Elijah Cummings, along with Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson. Guys, good to have you. Eugene, I want to read from your piece in the Washington Post in just a moment, but Elijah, we're getting depressed here.
Oh, don't be depressed.
We're getting depressed.
Why? Why is that?
It just seems like we can't find anything nice to say about either side in Washington, and that it doesn't seem like anybody is maybe completely invested in getting something done. There are accusations on both sides about that. Is that true?
I think it's very unfortunate that we are at what seems to be a stalemate. And I think that basically we've got to put our political hats, take them off, leave them at the door, and get this issue resolved. I just had a town hall meeting last night in my district with Elizabeth Warren, and I can tell you the constituents are saying, look, we're concerned about this debt ceiling, but you guys have got to get this done. And I think that this is a time for us to sit in the room and resolve this matter. And I'm glad the president is now engaged in this to a greater extent.
But Congressman, everyone's saying we should get in a room, and we should. But everyone's accusing the other side of not being there. That's kind of the bottom line from yesterday's news? Is that each side is accusing the other of not being there? I mean, this is silly.
Yeah, I got to tell you. I mean, but we got to also keep in mind that politics is the art of compromise, and when we look at a budget situation and one side is giving and the other side just says no way, that we cannot, on the one hand, the Democrats are saying let's reduce spending, and everybody agrees that we ought to reduce spending, and we had gotten pretty far along the way in doing that. And then the Republicans come back and say, we're not going to deal with the other side, that is bringing in some type of revenue.
Okay, but
that makes it very difficult.
We have two Democrats from Washington, Senator Brown, saying that the same thing about entitlement programs.
You know what? And I hate even being in this position, because I am convinced that this can be done. I am convinced that everybody in Washington, I hope, understands how significant this debt ceiling situation is. And so I'm hoping that the leadership will, because when you talk to the rank and file, to members that I talk to when they're not on the floor of the House, most people want to get a deal done. So hopefully our leaders will be able to get together and get it done.
Well, Congressman Cummings, so you're talking to rank and file members, but are they Republican members? The question I have for you is, do you have confidence that, let's say they do a deal, that the president and the leaders in the House and the Senate get a deal, and they bring it to the floor of the House, does Speaker Boehner have the votes to actually get it passed? Do those rank and file? Go ahead,
yeah, I talked to both Republicans and Democrats, and there are some Republicans, and particularly our newer ones, who are mainly Tea Party type, who are adamant that they will not vote for such a deal. But then there are other ones that have been around for a while who says, you know what, I'm hoping that we're able to get a deal and move on. And so I have confidence. I have confidence in both sides, and we're going to be able, if they can hammer out a deal, that we'll be able to get it through.
Okay, Eugene Robinson, if you were writing a column right now on this conversation, what would your lead line be? Just, off the top of your head. You're thinking, you're at the typewriter, you're trying to pull it all together and really crystallize this conversation.
Prospects bleak for a deal on debt ceiling, and because both sides are not yet ready, it seems to me, to compromise. Now, it's getting very late in this process, but it seems to me that if Republicans really will not give a centimeter on the revenue side, I think this is very difficult, and potentially, we could go to August 2nd, and the president would have to decide whether or not to try to exercise some sort of constitutional option to avoid a catastrophic default. I'm not seeing this progress that we all hope to see.
Congressman Cummings, is there more that you want from the president in terms of moving this this process forward and actually getting to a result where both sides give something at the table?
I want the president to do what he did the other day. I know some have complained it was a little too hard on the Congress, but I think he has to do what he said he would do during his campaign. The president said, I will not tell you what you want to hear, I'll tell you what you need to hear. And I think he needs to continue to take that bully pulpit and move around the country, do whatever he has to do to try to make sure that the American people understand how urgent this situation is. And I thought he made a good case the other day. With regard to the tax cuts for the rich at the expense of Medicare and programs of that nature as we know them. And so, yes, I want the president to continue to do what he's doing. And I understand that some feelings may be a little hurt, but we've got to get past this. And it's just that urgent. And I think that he's at a point now, as Eugene said, I mean, we're reaching a deadline point. And if we don't deal with it now, we're going to see some results that are not very pleasing to anybody, and I think our constituents will make us pay for it dearly.
Jonathan, real quick, and then I got to get to some other things.
Congressman, so the president yelled at Congress for not being in Washington, for not being here, as he said, to get a deal done, and then he jets off to Philadelphia for a fundraiser, and Republicans smack him around for not being there. Is that a fair criticism?
No, I don't think so. I think what the president is, as he said, he's dealing with issues every day, and he's dealing with them constantly. And I think that, again, it's not so much a question of being here, it's what we do when we are here. And I think that, again, going back to what Eugene said, if we cannot get the other side to even compromise in closing some of these loopholes, yeah, it's going to be a problem. But I'm hoping that the Republicans will look at this and say, you know what, this makes absolutely no sense. We have got to at least meet them 1/3 of the way, if not 1/4, and try to address this issue.
All right, Eugene, we're going to get to your column next block, but the Congressman Cummings, before you, yesterday we took a look at the cover of Time magazine, The War Next Door, a look at Mexican drug cartels. You have legislation you're going to be introducing with Representative Carolyn Maloney looking at weapons trafficking. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we had a hearing yesterday where experts came in and basically told us that the guns that are fueling the drug wars in Mexico, and I'm talking about tens of thousands of them, Mika, are coming from the United States, and that there are two things that they want. Now, these were ATF agents who begged us, and they said, look, you've got to have stronger laws with regard to straw purchasers, that is, those people who buy guns and then sell them to Mexican cartels. And then you've got to have something else. You've got to have a drug trafficking law whereby this stuff is made illegal. And so right now, it is the guns coming from our nation. 80% of all the guns that are involved in the cartel's efforts in Mexico are coming from the United States. And so our legislation will go to those two issues to try to help the ATF agents who have asked for this kind of legislation, trying to help them better control our situation in Mexico.
Congressman Elijah Cummings, thank you. Eugene, stay with us.